When setting up a drip irrigation system, you will have questions, especially if it's your first time installing one. So today, I'm answering 8 of the most common questions I've received about drip irrigation. Stick around. This is In the Garden. No sense in wasting any time, let's jump right in. These are 8 of the most frequently asked questions about drip irrigation. And these questions all came from my viewers, other new gardeners, just like you may be. Question number 1, is it better to buy a drip irrigation kit or individual parts? I get this question a lot, especially from people who have never installed drip irrigation before. Because you see those kits at the store and it looks like a really good value. You're going to get everything you need and it just seems like the simpler solution. And those kits are really good sometimes. They have a lot of parts in them and you can save a little bit of money, but only if they have what you actually need. The problem is that sometimes they come with a lot of stuff that you're never going to need or use. So that would just be wasting money. So really, to decide between buying the kit or individual parts, you really need to plan out your drip irrigation system. See what parts you're actually going to need and use, and then compare that to what comes in the kit. If the kit has all those parts that you need and it's not coming with a bunch of extra stuff, then that could possibly save you some money. But otherwise, you can buy those parts individually, and that would be a better value because you're only going to buy the things that you actually need and not be wasting money on a bunch of parts that are just going to sit in your garage collecting dust. The next question is, how many emitters can I install on a single drip irrigation system? And this question, you can calculate it out to get a really specific answer based off your water pressure and the length of tubing that you're using and a bunch of other things. But as a general rule, you want to plan for about 200 gallons per hour. That's as much as that half-inch line can supply. Anything above that and your emitters aren't going to be getting enough water to function properly. So the way that you calculate this out is looking at the emitters that you're using, whether that's half gallon per hour, 1 gallon per hour, or 2 gallon per hour. You're just going to add up all those emitters, and as long as you don't go above 200, you should be safe. Now, of course, if your water pressure is really low or you have a really long system, meaning you're running it for hundreds of feet, you might want to bring that number down just a little bit to be safe, maybe to about 150. But as long as you're not going above like 150, 200, you should be good. So as an example, I use 1 gallon per hour emitters in my garden. That means I can install 200 of those on one system. That's 200 plants that I could be watering off of one system. Now, if I'm using larger emitters, it's going to be less. So if I had the 2 gallon per hour emitters, I'm only going to be able to put about 100 of those. But if I'm using the half gallon per hour emitters, I can put 400 of those on one system and I should be just fine. And that leads me into question 3, which is, what size emitters should I be using in my vegetable garden? Now, there's different size emitters, and by size, we're referring to the gallons per hour or the flow rate of those emitters. And they come in sizes like half gallon per hour, 1 gallon per hour, 2 gallon per hour. So you can use whichever size you want to use in your garden, whatever is easily accessible to you, like at your local home improvement stores. But you do want to consider your soil. Your soil is really the key thing in choosing the size of emitter you're going to use. If the water infiltrates into your soil quickly, you can use any size that you want. But if your soil infiltrates water very slowly, you're going to want to make sure that you're using the lower flow rates, otherwise you're going to end up with runoff. So for example, if you're using a 2 gallon per hour emitter and it's not absorbing into your soil as fast as it's coming out of the emitter, you're going to end up with runoff, and that's just wasteful. So in that situation, you would use the 1 gallon or a half gallon per hour to make sure that you don't have that problem. But in most situations, most home gardens, if your soil is decent, you should be able to use the half gallon, the 1 gallon, or the 2 gallon per hour emitters. And of course, you're going to adjust your time that you're running your drip irrigation system to account for how fast the water's coming out of those emitters. So if you're using a faster emitter, you're going to turn down the time so it's watering less. Otherwise, you're going to be overwatering your plants. And also with the slower flow rates, you're going to water more so that you don't underwater your plants. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a second and do so now. It not only helps out my channel, but it helps you to see when I post new gardening videos. And make sure you click the like button so I know you're enjoying the video. Question number 4. Can I expand or add on to my drip irrigation system later on after installing it? The answer to this question is yes. It's really easy to add on or expand your drip irrigation system later on. These parts are really easy just to cut into or to attach to, so you can just keep building off of it. As long as you don't go too big and get above the emitters that you can supply on your single drip irrigation system, you can just keep adding to it season after season. So if you want to add next year maybe another garden bed, you could just tap in either to the end of your existing line or even cut into the center of it and add a T and split off into a new area. Really simple. And of course, you can always add more emitters each season if you plant more plants. Question number 5 is, do I leave the faucet on after I've installed my drip irrigation system and a timer? The answer to this is yes. If you're using a timer, once that's installed and set up, you're going to turn on your faucet, hit your hose bib, and you're going to leave it on. The timer is going to take care of the flow going into the garden. So you're not going to turn on and off that faucet every day anymore. Of course, if you live somewhere where it's cold and during the winter time, you're going to want to turn that off and disconnect everything so it doesn't freeze. But during the spring and summer while you're growing, you're going to leave that faucet turned on 24/7. Number 6. Do I need to install a backflow prevention valve on my drip irrigation system? And for this, you definitely want to make sure that you're installing that. That's a really important piece to install. Is make sure that nothing that's in your drip irrigation system gets back into your house, into your water supply. And that's just an extra safeguard. And depending on where you live, it might actually be a requirement to have those installed outside, especially if you're putting on any kind of irrigation system. So you're going to want to make sure you install that right on your hose bib before any of your other drip irrigation parts. They're inexpensive and easy to install. Number 7, can I remove the drip lines after they're installed in order to till my soil or to do other work in the garden? Yes, you can just pull those out of the way. It's really easy. The lines will just roll up, or you can just pull them over to the side, whatever you need to do to be able to do that work in your garden. And then when you're done, you're just going to put them back. The only thing you need to do is make sure you don't lose any of those little supporting stakes while you're moving it around in your garden, because sometimes they'll fall off while you're moving it and they'll just be left in your garden. So just make sure you look for those on the ground and pick them up, or any that are left by your plants, and you should be good. Just pull it out of the way and lay it back down when you're done. Of course, if you've installed it underground, you don't want to till the soil once it's installed because you're going to damage that line. You can't just pull it out of the way easily. So if it's underground, you won't want to till in that area anymore, only if it's installed on top of the soil. And finally, question number 8. What do I do if I've punched a hole into my 1/2-inch tubing where I didn't want one? Now this is a really easy fix. You could just pop in a goof plug. Goof plugs, you can pick them up down at your local home improvement store or online, and it's just a little piece of plastic that's made to fit inside that little hole that you punch in, and you could just pop one in wherever there's a hole you didn't want one, or if you've moved something later on, and it'll fix that and the water won't be squirting out of there making a mess in your garden. Really simple fix. I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed it, I would greatly appreciate it if you click the like button and consider subscribing. And if you still have additional drip irrigation questions, feel free to leave those in the comments. I try my best to answer the questions in the comments as quickly as possible and as thoroughly as possible, so feel free to leave them there. And also, check out one of my other drip irrigation videos. It might answer some of those questions for you as well. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.